first page of her diary held an inscription, written by her parents when she was 12 years old. It spoke of memories from her childhood and about the world that awaited her. It spoke of minutes running into hours and days and years, and of how our lives are governed by the hands of the clock. How people are led by time, like little children are led by their parents. The inscription said that happiness was a matter of being in the right place at the right time, and that everything had its time, a time to be born, a time to die, and a time in between that would be her life. And at the bottom of that first page, her father's scrawly letters formed the words, "Forget not your Creator." She was only 12 at the time, but she remembered those words so vividly. They had a special ring to them, like a secret charm, like the key to some treasure. Forget not your Creator.
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. This fourth message from God to his people speaks of the seventh day of the week. The origins of this special day go way back to the beginning of time. In the first part of the Bible, we read how God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. And this came to a climax on the 6th day when he created Adam, the first man. After each act of creation, God was delighted with what he had made. And as the Bible says, God saw that it was good. After the creation of Adam, it's as if he was so delighted, he decided to take a day off. Not that creation was over. After this day of rest, God continued his creative work and even involved Adam, asking him to name the animals. Yet after these first 6 days, you could say all the ingredients were there. Everything was in its place. Time to pause, to rest, and think things over a bit. This is the fourth message God gave his people. As they were not acquainted with God yet, it's very understandable that the first 3 messages of God were all about the special relationship between God and his people. A kind of introduction and explanation of who God is, what his name is, and what he wants from his people. But now that's all clear, it's time to move on. Time to get on with life. But before we start, God stops us and he says, "Wait a minute. I know all about the way you live life and how easily you get caught up in it. So let's check the schedule first. I want to be in your agenda. I want you to be back here with me in 7 days. And then we are going to have a day of rest together. And I don't just mean next Sabbath. I mean every Sabbath. Why 7 days? Have you ever wondered why God didn't say the 8th day or the 9th? I mean, economically, that would seem better, wouldn't it? In fact, some time ago, certain communist regimes forced people to work for 10 days without a break rather than 7. They quickly changed their minds when people collapsed with exhaustion. Production went down instead of up. Several other cycles were tested, but none proved to be as effective as God's own model, 6 days of work and 1 day of rest. I guess you could safely assume that just like the 24-hour time frame we live in, the 7-day cycle is also a built-in pattern for men and women. But it's not just physical exhaustion that makes it hard to go on longer than 6 days. The problem with being in any seemingly non-stop situation is that we can develop a kind of tunnel vision. We become unable to see things in perspective and we lose the ability to look around us or to look forward. As a result, we become fixed on our own problems and our own little world swells and begins to take on the proportions of the universe, or so we think. By giving this commandment, God is saying that as human beings, we are finite, and we have limits, and that it's all right to be that way. We are free to be ourselves, limited by the boundaries of our energy and capabilities.
When I first saw some of my photographs, I thought, it kind of looks like fun, you know. I project something on, on a piece of paper, and obviously other people liked it, and it was nice to have that confirmation that people thought, hey, she can really do this. When I first started modeling, it just seemed like doors were just opening up. I started out in Orlando. After a couple months, I went down to Miami. We ended up living there for 2 years. And then I moved to New York, and I worked there. And in really a matter of weeks, I was working almost every single day. And I never really had a downtime where I was looking around for work. There was always work for me. Some of the situations you run into is, you have to be there at 5 a.m. and people come straight from a party. They're still hungover or they're literally still drunk. Some other people don't have the same lifestyle, which is hard to be confronted with, especially if they're very open about it. I remember when I first moved to Miami and I was working every day and it was fun. I was seeing lots of people, and I got booked for a job in Miami for an Italian magazine, which is a pretty big deal because I'd only been modeling a couple months. And I remember showing up at 5 a.m. for hair and makeup early in the morning in Miami Beach. It was pretty, one of the fun hotels, and nobody was there. Finally, by 8 o'clock, everybody kind of rolled in, hungover, bad moods. And as the day proceeded, they were doing drugs in the bathroom, and I was just kind of like, oh no. And there were 2 other male models. It was me and 2 guy models, and they were all doing beach things. And of course, then comes the question, well, why don't you take off your top and run down on the beach with these guys? And that just was one of those things. So I said, no, thank you. I'll just keep my clothes on. So it's just, different things that, come up, and you kind of have to politely decline. Well, the fun of it was being able to have the freedom to go to New York, and it was fun. I mean, New York is an exciting city. It was a great city to work at. It was kind of a thrill to be with one of the biggest agencies there, and I was treated very nicely. And, they found me great work for great paychecks. When you're talking about that much money and how seemingly easy it seems, how easy it seems to make that much, it gets hard to say no.
Maybe this Sabbath command is really a challenge. Do we dare to accept that we are limited and that there is someone greater who will take care of us? That is why keeping the Sabbath takes faith, and why the violation of the Sabbath is mentioned as a major cause of the disasters that hit the people of Israel. They would not trust God to provide, so they shut themselves out of his provision and his protection. Really, it's all a matter of release, of daring to let go.
Her diary became her best friend. Its pages filled up with memories, secrets, and the great relief of unloading all her burdens as she confided them to paper. Then she discovered love as she had never known it before, her first and only real love. How handsome he was when she first saw him. Later, she helped her daughter take her first steps. What a relief after those troublesome first years. She'd often wondered, as the fever would come back again and again, if her little girl would ever walk. all those visits to doctors and hospitals, all the setbacks. But after that, she didn't have much time to stop and watch. She wanted to take all life had to offer, so she hurried along, afraid of missing something. First her part-time job, then a little shop of her own, the long hours spent trying to keep the business afloat. Then, when everything seemed to be spinning out of control, that phrase came back to her. Forget not your Creator.
So now we have a Sabbath. What are we supposed to do then on a day when we're not supposed to do anything? The command said, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Well, that word holy has been a source of misunderstanding. The word that is used in Hebrew is kadesh, to keep holy or to set apart. This infers that it is to be set apart from other days and other activities that are done on the other days. Because God commands that this day be different, some people stop doing almost everything one normally does during the week, and that includes just about everything. For example, when I travel in Israel, I often stay in hotels that have Sabbath elevators. They're set to automatic, constantly moving up between floors and then down again. All this to make sure that any Sabbath-observing guest will not be forced to work by selecting and pressing an elevator control button. Now, this may seem over the top, but the attitude behind it forces them to really stop and take time to contemplate. There is a fine line, though, between observing rest and becoming a slave to the Sabbath.
My work was almost no day and night. I remember, leaving at night, getting to a job at 2 a.m. or getting to the hotel at 2 a.m., having to be up at 5:30, working all day, catching the plane at night again, sometimes even traveling between the islands and back to New York, which is about a 4-hour flight, and, repacking your suitcase, being ready to show up and strut around New York and go visit the agency and pick up your ticket and leave again. So it was busy. It was intense. And in the meantime, you have to make sure you look good. Your hair's trimmed up, your nails look good, your skin looks good. So it was almost 24 hours a day. I also had a chance to do the shows in New York, which was a really fun experience. Terrifying. And one of the reasons probably was because everybody is so thin and you just feel that sense of competition to be as skinny as you can be, which, my body could not handle that. At that time, I was 118 American pounds, which is just very thin at being 6 foot tall. I remember one of the hairstylists, he and me it was nothing. And he brought me down to tears just because he would be so relentlessly putting me down and having comments and just brought me down literally. And I would be crying in front of the camera with this, pretty dress on and a smile on my face, and the tears would be streaming down my face. And this, I remember, and nobody said a word. Absolutely nobody said a word about it. And I just could not believe it. It was hard. Then you just feel like you're treated as a piece of meat, you're not a person. That's not important to them. It's just, do you fit in this dress? Does your hair look right? At that moment, they told me it was too long, and he would not stop talking about it for, almost the whole day. For hours, he would keep telling me, you need to cut your hair, and at some certain point, you've just had it. How many times can you tell that to somebody? In so many different ways. So it was hard to be treated as unimportant. You start to think, why am I doing this? Is it all worth it? What is going to be more important? And I remember my husband and I having a conversation about this all because I couldn't do it anymore. I would be going to the airport, he would go drop me off, and I would be crying on the way to the airport saying, I don't want to go anymore, I just want to stay home.
So how are we to use this day then? First, we need to take account of where we are. It takes time to get rid of our tunnel vision and shake off the burdens of the week. We need space to become honest with ourselves, to face the successes and failures of the days behind us, to admit that we indeed might have been wrong about certain things. And it's important that we do come to that point of sobering up about ourselves. Otherwise, how are we going to meet with God? Sure, we might think we can just fall out of bed, put our best suit on, march into church and sit out the sermon, but that's not at all what we are talking about here. Remember the first 3 commandments. God wants to meet us and talk with us. If we are going to really meet with God, we had better be prepared to be honest. Otherwise, we will be just hiding from him or fighting him. Either way, we will miss all the blessing of coming home to him, of being forgiven, of being accepted and cared for as we are. The next thing is time with God. We need time alone with him. Firstly, because for sure, there'll be lots of very personal things to talk to him about. And we shouldn't ignore these. They'll catch up with us anyway, sometime. But being alone with God is not enough. We need to share in all the things God has revealed to others in order to grasp who God really is and what it is he wants for us. And last but not least, we need to take time to relax and be with our family and friends.
It was at her daughter's wedding. She remembered that moment very well. The radiant smile on her little girl's face and the strange familiar feeling of having been there before. Then her husband whispered in her ear, "That's our little baby. Just look at her, all grown up. How time flies." Then all of a sudden, she realized that time was running out for her. Like a clock counting down, ticking away what was left of her. She almost panicked as she thought back to what was written in her diary. She had been too busy to remember. It all went by so fast. She had forgotten her Maker. Things changed in her life when she put that right. And she knew then what she had to give to her granddaughter. One phrase she would always remember: "Forget not your Creator."
You may have noticed something strange about this whole Sabbath command. As I said a while back, we're talking about the 7th day when we speak of the Sabbath. Yet in most Western, and especially most Christian societies, the 7th day would be Saturday, and the so-called day of worship would be Sunday. Indeed, the Sabbath really is the Saturday. In fact, in Jewish tradition, it starts at sundown on Friday night, when the Sabbath candles are lit in the homes of every Jewish family, and it lasts until sundown the next day. When Jesus was crucified, he was taken off the cross just before the Sabbath started on Friday evening. Then the Bible tells us how on the morning of the first day of the week, the disciples discovered that his grave was empty. In other words, Jesus had risen from the dead on the first day of the week. Now, the first day of the week is not Monday, but Sunday. And soon after the early Christian church had been established, the the Christians who would traditionally come together on the Sabbath decided to meet on the morning of the first day of the week as well, to celebrate the resurrection. In other words, Sunday became a day from which to look forward. As it was the start of a new week, disciples would realize how the resurrection of Christ meant the start of new life and a new mission in life. So although it started as an extra early morning meeting before work, it gradually evolved into what it is today, a full day of remembrance and celebration.
When I was traveling around as much as I was, I would go home and my body would just literally break down. I got bronchitis several times in a row, which is unusual to have it repeatedly. And then I just started to get very bad balance problems. My equilibrium was completely off. I still don't know to this day what happened, but I couldn't even make it to the bathroom. And I was so dizzy, my head was just spinning. I would be throwing up, and I couldn't even crawl to the bathroom. And my body just broke down. Now that I look back, I cannot believe what I put myself through without, taking a break for almost 6 years straight. I just cannot believe, it's just, God created the Sabbath for us. We didn't create it. He created it for us. So it's we need a rest. We do. That's, how He created us. And it's important to have that rhythm. On the outside, it seemed like we had it all together. We had a beautiful home. I had a great job. My husband had a great job. We had enough money. It was not, we didn't really have a lot of worries. But, on the other hand, we paid a big price tag. We basically had no friends just because we didn't have the time. We weren't involved in our church. We didn't have any time. We were always gone. It was hard to see our families. And it just, it just came to a point where I needed it to all stop because I needed to have something normal, something peaceful, For once, I just wanted to be quiet and not have to go. While now, I just, I'm happy. I made it another day with having 2 little ones and everybody is healthy, and it's kind of interesting how everything comes back to life.
Let's look at this in perspective. The Egyptians who held the people captive sat around all the time, feasting. Meanwhile, the Israelites were probably working 18 hours a day, building those huge pyramids. Blood, sweat, and many tears, and any moment of inactivity was rewarded with a brutal whipping. Then the Lord takes them out of that grinding situation and gives them the Sabbath, to abolish the slavery of endless labor and to inaugurate a new rhythm of life, a joyful rhythm of work, worship, and rest for all the people in the land.